in Friuli, you have the Italian quality of life. The quality of life is fantastic. Every day it's finished with a beautiful glass of wine in any place, anywhere you are. And you can also be sure that there's a very high probability that you are in the sun. Because many times I came there, I came from Piemonte, and in Piemonte in the winter, you have snow and rain and clouds. And then you come in Friuli, and there's the blue sky and the sun.
Welcome to Modo di Bere, the podcast about local drinks and local sayings. I'm your host, Rose Thomas Bannister. Today, I have a special edition of Modo di Bere, another installment of the Boot in 20 series, where we go through each one of Italy's 20 wine regions with an expert in that region who is going to tell us everything that we need to know to begin to explore this region. Today, we're doing a region that I really love, Friuli, in northeastern Italy. And I want to introduce my guest who is here to take us through Friuli and the North Adriatic, which includes Western Slovenia and the area of Istria. I'm here with Paul Balke, who is a journalist and wine lover who has published 3 books, including the very beautiful North Adriatic, the book that I have been reading and really enjoying about this wine region. It is a absolutely gorgeous travel book, everything that a wine and travel book should be. I've really been enjoying reading it, and I'm really happy that Paul is here to speak with us. So Paul has written this book about the North Adriatic. He's also written a book about Piemonte, and he's originally from the Netherlands, but he's lived in Italy for many years and is also, like myself, a musician, a music lover, a pianist, and himself a winemaker. Paul, did I leave anything out that you want our listeners to know about your biography?
I think you hit the most important points.
Yes, wonderful. Well, welcome. Paul, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yes, really happy.
Wonderful. So Paul and I met at the Venetili Wine Fair this spring of 2023 in Verona, and he handed me a copy of this very special, very lovely, large travel book. And I am so happy that we have the opportunity to speak with each other. So Paul, let's dive in and talk about the North Adriatic. I think it would be great for our listeners to just begin with the map. So we can talk about the Friuli region. So take us through the map of Friuli and the other parts of what you're calling the North Adriatic to help us understand where we are geographically, please.
Well, maybe first you should tell the audience that I'm a very big Italy lover. I live in Italy, and Italy is my favorite country, and I enjoy Italy. I love the country, the people, the culture, everything. When I am driving in Italy, I look for the great food, the great wines, and I always enjoy meeting the people. They're very funny, they're great, and they can be really fantastic. So what happened when I went to Friuli? In Friuli, I did my study, I studied the region, I studied also a lot of history, and I came across the fact that when you see the eastern border of Friuli, you have to discover that this border is a bit artificial. Because after the Second World War, 1947, they had to make at some place some border where there was no border before. And that's how the region was defined. And then you had Friuli. And now the eastern part that before was in the same country is now in 3 countries. So I am going back to the original history of the wine region, because the wine is the most important thing, and not the other things. In order to understand the wine, you have to understand a little bit the history. So I started to drive around Collio, which is a beautiful region in Collio. And in Collio, it's very easy to enter the border and to what was formerly Yugoslavia, and it's now Slovenia. Because in fact, Collio has the form of a half shape, and inside the half moon is the Slovenian part, which is also part of Collio in the past. This is now called Collio and Brda. Both together are still one of the most important wine regions worldwide, and that's one of the messages of my book. The only thing is, in the mid, there is the border that used to be the border between Italy and Yugoslavia, and now is the border between Italy and Slovenia. This area near Gorica in the past was the most important wine region of the Habsburg period of Austria, of Vienna, and still is a very important wine region. And maybe it's not really on the radar of many people. And I think the importance of this area needs to be understood well. When you are in Collio, you go to the west. There's a large area, it's called Grave. There's a smaller area northeast of the town Udine, it's called Colli Orientali. Then you have south by the sea, you have some regions that are not very well known. Friuli-Ania, Friuli-Venezia, Aquileia, and Isonzo. And then you go to the east and you have a very special region in the area of Trieste, which is called the Karst. In Italian language, it will be Carso. And the Karst also is totally different from the rest because it is karst, which means very heavy stones, stony region, difficult life conditions, difficult conditions for growing anything, also wine, but anything. And it is the same geological area that goes from around Trieste down to Greece. The whole part of the mountains through Croatia, Montenegro, Albania to Greece, it's the same kind of karst area. South of that area near Trieste, you have some small wine regions. That's already Istria, because Istria in fact starts near Trieste. There are several definitions of Istria. You have one that is only Croatia, but the real Istria is including also a part of Slovenia, and in fact also the area of Murcia, which is in Trieste. So officially, also a part of Italy is in Istria. To the east of Istria, you have a large bay area, one of the most beautiful parts of Europe, and one of the most special wine regions that I ever saw. It's the Kvarner area. Nobody knows about this. And there is so much interesting thing to discover there. It's called Kvarnaro in Italian or Kvarner in English.
That's fantastic. So tell me more about this artificial border. When and why was it created? And what was the effect of its creation on this previously united wine region?
Well, you have to understand that the town of Gorica has a very old history. It's a beautiful town. It has been part of the Austrian Empire for more than 1,000 years. And the seat of Gorica was also the headquarters and the capital of the county that used to be a very big country. And later it all became Austria. And the most important wine region in that period was a huge region of hills north of Gorica, and it also included the hills to the east into what is now the Pave Valley, and also a small part of the Karst to the south. That was in the past called the area of Gorica. Then we are speaking about the period before the 19th century. Gorica remained very important until 1920. So this whole wine area in that was one country. It was Austria. Then you had the First World War. It became all Italy because everything changed. Then you had the Second World War, and then they had to make the border between Italy and Yugoslavia. And that was the most important point because then they had to make the borders around Gorica, north of Gorica, and also south of Gorica, south around Trieste, etc. And that was difficult because this very beautiful wine region, which has a beautiful ambience, beautiful culture, and high quality conditions of life, high quality wines, it is already known for centuries. This area was then broken into two because of political reasons. And that's means that for a long period, the part that became the Italian part is now called Collio, and then you have some other parts too. But let's speak about Collio because it's most important. It became very famous. The people who lived at the other part of the border, they were sometimes family, relatives, friends of the people in Italy, but they lived in another country, in other political sphere. So they could only sell their grapes to the cooperative because that was the socialistic system in Yugoslavia. And they saw their friends and their relatives in Collio prosper because they became very rich companies and very wealthy, and they became very important in Italy and worldwide. So it's understandable that the wineries and the wine people in the eastern part of the border, they, as soon as Yugoslavia split up and the countries became independent, they wanted to grow and they wanted to become important too. And that's what we see what is happening now.
So, Paul, what was it about these wines that called to you? What was it about this territory that called to you? I understand it was from the introduction of your book, it was almost the area came to you in a dream. You speak of this special quality of light with the alpine breezes and the sea breezes mixing together and making this beautiful quality of light. I've experienced this myself when I visited this region in 2022. So what was it that drew you to these wines and to this place?
There are many things. In Friuli, you have the Italian quality of life. The quality of life is fantastic. Every day it's finished with a beautiful glass of wine in any place, anywhere you are. And you can also be sure that there's a very high probability that you are in the sun. Because many times I came from Piedmont, and Piedmont in the winter, you have snow and rain and clouds. And then you come in Friuli, and there's the blue sky and the sun. And that's a big difference. And I tell the people in Friuli how fortunate they are because they have fantastic weather conditions. I remember one time I came from Macedonia, which is south in the Balkan. It was -20 there. And then the next day we were in Friuli, and at noon we are sitting outside having our lunch outside in the sun. It's much more north, and still it's incredible because the climate conditions in this area are very special. So the people who live there, they do not know really how fortunate they are. It's almost Mediterranean, with a small touch of continental climate. But this special condition is very special. And that's also the main reason for the quality of the wines. So you asked me about the wines. What I like in the wines, and what I liked from the start, when you drink a wine from Collio, from the Colli Orientali, or from some of the famous producers from Isonzo, they are very elegant. But these wines have also a minerality and a body which is very refined and also very typical and recognizable that you don't find in other regions. And that is so special.
Tell me more about the climate and geology of this region in terms of wine growing conditions.
You have to understand that near Trieste, you have the northern part of the Adriatic Sea, which brings in the summer cool air into the area. But in winter, it keeps the region also warmer because the sea never becomes very, very cool. And then a few kilometers north, of course, you will have already the Alps. In such a small distance, you have the sea and the Alps. And this creates a contrast. It means every evening, also in summer, some cool air comes down from the Alps across the hills. And in the winter, the cool air from the Alps is met by the warm air from the Mediterranean. And this creates also very special conditions. And it's only here, because you have more places where you have mountains and sea close. I cannot really explain, and maybe nobody can, but it's a fact that this area has always produced olives. More than wine, olives is a sign that you have a very moderate climate. Otherwise, you cannot have olives. And there have been always olives in this area. Only it stops north of Udine and north of Cividale. There you don't find any more olives because there it stops because it's too cool.
I remember being there in the spring and seeing the mix in Collio and Brda across the border, but really a shared wine region always. This mix on the hills of the grapevines, the olive trees, and the cherry trees in bloom in the spring. It's a beautiful sight.
It's beautiful, and it also shows the conditions of the area. So they always say that Collio and Brda are a territory of wine and cherries, because in fact, as you say, the cherry is very important. They have also each year in the Brda area, they have the huge party for the cherries in Vishnivik. It's always wonderful to go there and meet people. And sometimes you drink a lot of wine, maybe a little bit too much, but it's okay.
So let's talk a little bit about the different regions, maybe starting in Friuli and then going across the border into Slovenia, down into Croatia. Just take us through the map, moving from the western part of the Italian region known as Friuli-Venezia Giulia, moving across into Slovenia and down into Croatia. Can you just take us through some of these wine regions and tell us about some of the wines that are made there and what they taste like, what they're like?
One remark about the name Venezia Giulia. That's special. The word Giulia is from the Roman word Julii, because Julius Caesar, who was here 50 before Christ, he founded the town of Cividale. There's also a big statue for him. And since that period, the eastern part of Friuli up to Trieste and south to Istrian is called the area of the Giulia. So the part of Venice that is the area of the Giulia. So it would be in Italian Venezia Giulia, and of course in Italian it sounds much more beautiful. So that's Venezia Giulia. In fact, you have different parts of the territory in Friuli. You have the flat part, the plains, and you have the hills. And here is something strange, I would say, because in Friuli, many people think that the hills is the most important area, and the flat plains are for the lower quality wines. And you see it because many of the lower priced wines and the wines for big quantities and lower quality, if they are produced in the flat area. But is it correct? I don't think it's correct. Because I think in the area of the Grave and also the Isonzo and even the Aquileia, if you find the right spot and you work well, you have conditions that are very similar to the top areas in Bordeaux. And that's important. And it means that in such areas you can create very good wines. And some of the producers are doing that. And the point is that many of the wine grape varieties from Bordeaux and from France have been introduced in this area that has another region. What you see is that in the Grave area and also in Isonzo, there are some fantastic producers making great Refosco. Refosco del Peduncolo Rosso is one of the special typical wines of this area. It's a facility, but it gives great wines if you allow the wine to ripen. One of the producers in Isonzo, last year he showed me, he opened a bottle of 20 years old for me. That was fantastic. It was a Refosco del Peduncolo Rosso, 20 years old. Such wines are one of the mainstay of this area, and you can find it all over the area. West of Collio remains the most important area. West of Collio, so you have the big plain of the Grave. The Grave is an area with at least 8,000 hectares of vineyards, with a lot of Prosecco production, a lot of Ribolla Gialla, Spumante production, and as I said, also some very interesting artisanal producers who make some really great stuff. Down near the coast, you have one area that's very special. That's called Aquileia. Do you know Aquileia? Have you been there?
I have not.
Oh, that's a pity. That's a big pity. You have to know that in the Roman Empire, Aquileia was one of the 4 most important towns of the Roman Empire. Why? Because here the Romans, they founded this town 180 before Christ. and it was one of the most important towns until 500 after Christ. So it was very, very long period important, and you can find very interesting stuff there. You should go there and look what they find in the fields. And it's a wine area, and they have the very famous Refosco di Scodovacca, which is a special clone of the Refosco wine, which is made in the area of the Aquileia. And I also find some producers. One of them made some study in the United States too, and he went back, and now he produces one of the best Malvasias I tasted. He is a guy in Aquileia, very interesting. And I like to point out these things because a region like Aquileia is not very well known. People drive on the highway, just go to Collio and don't stop in Aquileia. It's pity. So I would like to point out the jewels that you can find there. East of Aquileia, you have the area of the Isonzo. Isonzo is the famous river. Maybe you know about a certain American writer called Hemingway.
Indeed.
He was there, and he wrote about the Isonzo in his book Farewell to Arms. Did you know that?
That's wonderful.
The book is very interesting. Just because of this history. Actually, Hemingway did not really fight in the war. In the book, something like that is suggested. It does not matter at all. I think it's very important that he wrote this book, and I think it's very important that this book gives us another insight, especially separate from the history books, because this book gives you a feeling of what the war was and how the territory came. And it gives an insight in a very special part of the history of this region. So Hemingway did a good thing, and Hemingway went back to Friuli also later. And as I understand, he remained very often in Lignano Sabbiadoro, and there is even a statue for Hemingway in the park near the sea. In the east of Friuli, you have two big hill regions. One is Collio, and the other one is Colli Orientali. And in Colli Orientali, you can find so many lovely wines. Fantastic producers, small producers, big producers, people with long family history, people who are totally dedicated to make the best of their small parcels that they can make. And Colli Orientali is really a fantastic region. Did you know that?
Yes. I've enjoyed many wines from Colli Orientali. Absolutely.
Yes. Have you been also in the area of the Ramandolo?
So the trip that I took was pretty much exclusively right along the border in the Italian-Slovenian border in the region of Collio and Brda.
Yeah, it's logical because what you see in Bordeaux, people go to Pauillac and Margaux. In Barolo, in Piemonte, they go to Barolo. In Tuscany, you go to Montalcino. And in Friuli, you go to Collio and Brda. That's something like normal. It's logical because maybe the most prominent area of this whole area of North Adriatic is the area of Collio and Brda. What you have to tell about this region is that it's absolutely fantastic. It's, as you already said, it's a wonderful region to see. The climate and also the ambience of these soft rolling hills is really very beautiful. It's attractive. And you want to return. It's romantic. And what you maybe have noticed is that in the parts of Slovenia, many wineries are still young wineries. They're still building up their company. They're building up their wines. They're building up their terroir. Many vineyards in that part are maintained in a way that is not seen anymore in Italy because they have only wood. It's more organic. It's more different in grape. And it's more untouched. So there's more unspoiled nature. And that's, I think, very positive.
I visited the cooperative in Brda. I was very impressed by the Klet Brda operation and also with the history of how now what is perhaps more recognizable or valued in the wine world are individual labels and brands, but sometimes the history of a strong cooperative can, I'm learning, give a consistency historically so that the vineyards remain vineyards and there is an economy and without being interrupted by other kinds of industrialization or these kinds of things. So does that make sense in my understanding?
Yes, not only that, it was also not really a market economy. So there was no stress, there was no idea to produce big quantities. It was very rural. There was no dedication to quality or studies. It was very old style, and it remained very old style for a long period, and that's to their benefit. Sometimes now it's changing, and you see some of the vineyards in that part are now also treated in other way, but still the region works very authentic, and the wines are great in that part.
I'm out on my Brooklyn fire escape to tell you about this month's sponsor, Culture Without Borders Language Collective. You might remember my interview with co-founder Lindsay Speer from season 1. Later in this episode, I'm going to tell you about a free opportunity to improve your language skills. Let's talk a little bit moving into Istria, Croatia, and then this Kvarner region.
We should not leave out the region Vipava. Vipava is lovely. They call it the Smiling Valley. When they call it the Smiling Valley, it means there is something that gives you a good feeling. And that's my first impression when I go there. It feels good. It is an area with a lot of small local farmers, many who are doing just on tiny plots of 4 or 5 hectares. They do their best to make some great stuff, and they do. They have some authentic grape varieties like the Zelen, the Klanica, and the Pinela. And they have a lot of other wines too. By the way, Pinot Noir and also Sauvignon Blanc go great in that area. And you have some very good top producers there. And apart from that, you have very, very good restaurants in the area. And it's very rural. So you are in a wine region, you feel like you are in Austria 100 years ago. And that's a special feeling. So that's about Vipava. And Vipava is bordered on one side by the Alps, on the other side by the high mountains of the Karst. And then we enter the Karst. The Karst is very much a Slovenian-speaking region, except the town of Trieste. In Trieste, it's a small minority. And the whole area has not many vineyards because it's very tough to make wines in that area. But the guys who produce something make very authentic and great stuff of the local variety Refosco, also Malvasia and also Terran. And the Karst is also one of those areas. You should go there, take your time, take a bicycle, and go visit some wineries with your bicycle, and you will have a great time. Trieste is also interesting. Last year I visited Trieste, and only 3 kilometers from the center of this very important town, you have the first vineyards. And they told me that until 70 years ago, the town of Trieste did have 1,500 hectares of vineyards. And now there is maybe 10 or 12 left. It's all gone because people need to have space for their houses. And some of the steep hills of Prosecco have also left because today it's too costly to produce wines on those places. Besides the word Prosecco, where is the word Prosecco coming from? It's the small village near Trieste. It is called Prosek. It's called to the Count of Prosek, who started to make wine in that area because he was the local count. And that's the origin of the name Prosek. 200 years ago, the name Prosek was not a wine, wasn't even a sparkling wine. The name Prosek was one of the wines that were sold in Venice. And in Venice, when you would go to a tavern in Venice in the 18th century, they would sell you Malvasia, Ribolla, or Prosek. Those were the 3 important wines. And they could be the same wine. They only gave the name to something that was commercially available. So, for example, in the area of Collio, for about a period of 200 years, they produced the wine Prosek. Probably it was made by 10 or 12 different varieties from the local vineyards. But it was called Prosek just because in Venice you can sell it. So Prosek was a commercial name in the past. And it's still now, it's a commercial name. And now, because they use the name also for the grape variety Glera has become named also as Prosecco. But the name was originally a place near Trieste. That's the whole story.
That is fascinating.
It has to do with the story or the history of this area, because this area has a fantastic history. It was very cruel sometimes in the past, but it's very important to realize and to know it. And you want to know about Istria?
Yes, I do.
Istria is divided into a very large, big part in Croatia, and there is a smaller part in Slovenia. And the part in Slovenia is also a very beautiful hill part. They have the same kind of soils like Collio, but it's smaller. It's very much populated, so you have many houses just located near the vineyards. A big town, the town of Koper, the biggest coastal town of Slovenia. And in Slovenia, they have 1,800 hectares in a very tiny space. All of Istria is about 3,000 hectares of vineyards. But when you would see the map, you would not believe it, because the Croatian part is looking much bigger. And it has to do with the fact that the part of Slovenia is very intensively used for vineyards. Also there you have a very big cooperative. It is not yet, not anymore a cooperative, but still has a very dominant position in the area. And you have some very good local producers. And the main wines there are the Refosco and the Malvasia. Maybe just one word about the Malvasia grape. Malvasia is the name of a grape variety you hear from everywhere. You hear from Tuscany, there's Malvasia. There are at least 4 different varieties called Malvasia that you can find in Piemonte. 2 of them are red. Then you have Malvasia in Umbria, you have Malvasia in Calabria, you have Malvasia on the islands near Sicily. In totally, they say that there are 80 different types of grapes that grow Malvasia. It's a big confusion. This is what you call confusion. And the Malvasia from this part is called Malvasia, but it has nothing to do with all the other grapes. It's totally different. They have also found the genetical basis, and there is clearly no relation with the other grapes. So this Malvasia is original from this area. They don't know it's original from Trieste or from Istria or from Collio. But the interesting thing is that you can find this grape variety all over the area. So you can go from Kvarner to Istria to Trieste to the Karst, to Collio, to Udine and Pordenone. The Malvasia you find everywhere, because this grape variety is one of the big mainstays of the area, and it goes well everywhere.
Is it known as Malvasia Istriana in Italy?
Yes, but there's another strange thing. It's still known like that. People will know what you're talking about. But in Friuli, they did not allow anymore to put it on the label, and I think that only makes more confusion, because people don't know that this grape is not identical to other Malvasias.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The name Malvasia Istriana would be better to identify the grape variety. Although we do not know exactly the origin of the grape. The first mention of the grape was in 1894, when one winery from Zagreb, from Croatia, got a medal for some Malvasia from Istria. It means that the grape has been produced for some time in Istria in that period. But we knew that in that period there was no border, and we know that grapes and plants were always distributed over a wider area. So where is the real origin of this grape variety? I don't know, and nobody knows.
So it's hard to figure out exactly what the right name is, but we know that it's good. It's Malvasia from this North Adriatic area, and it's a delicious.
It's a wonderful wine, but not only from Istria, also from Collio and also from Pordenone. You can have wonderful wines from everywhere.
So tell me more about the characteristics of the regions in Istria, and then going down into Kvarner, which I would love to become more familiar with.
Istria is such a territory. When you go there, you have to make your agenda plain, because you never know when you're going to leave, because it's so wonderful. This area is really, I think it should compete with Tuscany, because maybe it's even more beautiful. It is very authentic. It has wonderful places, great wines, and so great to be there. So Istria is one of the most wonderful places of Europe. We can say that without any doubt. The area is divided from north to south. You have the coastal area, and the coastal area has many beautiful Venetian towns like Porets, and especially Rovigny. Rovigny is a jewel. It's a town that is one of the most beautiful places that you can see. And all these towns were in the past also wine centers. Still now in Porets you have the big agricultural institute, which was founded in the time by the emperor from Vienna, because it was all Austria one time. Istria has these characteristics. So the coastal area of Istria, of course, it's very touristic right now, but still very beautiful. Has also a lot of vineyards. It's alternation of vineyards and small villages with these beautiful church tops, and then some olive vineyards, olive yards, and then to the east slowly it goes up. And in the east you have one mountain about 1,400 meters, and you have quite mountainous region there. And it's very strange to know that the most cold place, the coldest place, Croatia in winter, is in central Istria. It's not in the east near Hungary or something. No, it's here. Because here it can be very freezing. So at the coast it can be -1. And in interior Istria it can be -10. And still now you have always climate different. But the best wines of Istria are on the higher parts. So you have to take the road from Porets or Rovigny, you go to the east, and it goes very slowly. So it takes 10, 20, 30 kilometers to go to a higher place, very gradually. And this area is so wonderful. And here you have also some of the best wines from the North Adriatic.
This region of Kvarner.
Yes, but Kvarner, it's a totally different story. By the way, nobody knows even that there is any wine at all, because it's more known for tourism. The Kvarner area is one of the first places for development of tourism in Europe. The first hotel for tourists was built in the Kvarner. Nobody knows this. That was because it was all Austria. And in the past, I think in the 17th and 18th century, the richest family from Austria, from Vienna, they were, of course, the aristocrats, the counts and the princes. They built some houses near the town of Partia. And that became a place where they started to live part of the winter, when it was very cold in Vienna. And here it's very moderate. And so that is the first kind of development of tourism. Then during the 19th century, there came a new kind of rich people in the Habsburg Empire. Were the people who had industry, the rich merchants from Vienna, but also from Prague and other places. And they wanted that those people go to another place because they should not interfere with the princes and the counts and the aristocrats. For that reason, they built hotels on the island of Kirk. And that was the start of the tourism, and it was the start of the wine industry. Still now, on that island of Kirk, which is a small island, you can drive around in maybe 2 hours, I don't know. It has more than 4,000 hectares of vineyards. That's huge. And most of these vineyards are abandoned. You have to go in the center, and it's a karst area because it is, geologically speaking, it's part of the karst region. So the stones and the walls from the karst you find also here. Many of the vineyards in the central part of Kirk are all walled. So they are about 100 square meters or 200 square meters, maybe sometimes 1 acre or 2 acres or 3 acres. And then they are all walled with the local stones. And you find huge fields of these stone walls with vineyards. And nobody is using them because it's too expensive for commercial production. But the wine is there. You can go there and pick up the grapes when you want. Of course, it will be September when the grapes are maturing. But for anybody who wants to pick some grapes in the nature, you can go there. And 4,000 hectares, that's really a lot. That's very big.
So who is left making wine in Kvarner today?
You have about 200 hectares on the island of Kurk near the town of Wurpnik. And they make a very special wine of the local grape Slachtina. Slachtina is one of the most refined white wines that you can find. It's elegant. It's light. It's a party wine. You will enjoy it. You should try it. It's not heavy at all. It's just so light and so easy drinkable. It's really very, very wonderful wine. You have also another fount. One of the most important findings for me, really a gem that I think will become important in the future, is a local grape from an island on the western part of Kvarner. So when you see the Kvarner area, you can see that inside the bay you have some very large islands. One of them is Stress, and the other one is Losin, Mari Losin and Vele Losin, or Losino in the Italian language. And there, to the left, you see two small islands. And the most western island is a sandy island of 200 hectares. It's, in fact, a sandy field in the sea. And that was, in the past, the most important Venetian port of this area. It was, so the old structure of the Venetians is still left there. And the Venetians have built vineyards all over that island with a local grape, and that local grape is called Sansigot. And I think this grape, it can give so wonderful wines. It is one of the most important discoveries that I have done recently. I think this wine will be a future new Nebbiolo or Pinot Noir, something like that. So that's a very big word.
That's wonderful. I had never heard of that before.
Yes.
I can't wait to find one and try it.
We have done some tastings, and some of the local wineries now are giving a lot of attention to this grape. And there are now coming in, follow this grape, and in the next 3 years, you will have some more producers coming out with great wines. It is going to be very interesting.
Let's talk some more about grapes, starting maybe with some of the red grapes of this general region from anywhere. We talked about Refosco. Can you tell me about some of the qualities of wines made from Refosco?
Refosco is a big family. You have several types of Refosco. And already the fact that it's a big family and that you have several clones, several typologies of this grape variety means that it's authentic in this area. It is very tannic and it has a very high acidity, but it has a lot of character. So it's very full, mouthful. And when well made, you can have a very long lasting wine that leaves you a long lasting impression. And that's wonderful. The only thing is when it's young, it's too aggressive. So the wine needs time to mature and to harmonize, and then it can become a very wonderful wine. And it can age for 20 years or 30 years. The only problem is that the wine is not yet that much discovered. We know that Cabernet Sauvignon is very much discovered in the world, and Nebbiolo from Piemonte. But Refosco should be more discovered, I think.
I completely agree. I have a very pleasant memory during my trip to Collio, where the conditions there in the hills are very nice for the white wines. I went to lunch in Cormons. It was a beautiful day, and I had a glass of Refosco with my lunch, and I just find it to have so much character.
It is a wonderful character, yes.
There's another red grape that we haven't talked about yet, which is more of a less tannic, a little bit lighter red that I like a lot, Schioppettino.
Schioppettino, that's a very typical grape. Schioppettino is mostly planted in the eastern hills of Friuli. And there is also a Slovenian name for it. I'm not sure if you know that. It's Pokalcha. It means that the grape variety is already very old and it was always placed in that area. The bunches are very big. They can become 40 centimeters top down, and that's very big. And that was the reason that many serious wine producers thought that this grape cannot be serious. I think the answer is in drinking the wine. The wine can be marvelous. And this grape is really getting serious now. And you have, especially in the Prepoto area, in the eastern part of the Colli Orientali, you have a small side valley where they have a lot of Scopatino, and there this grape really grows very well. It has this very special peppery character. It can be a bit smooth, but still with peppery. Small and refined tannins, so it's not very tannic, but there is tannin and it remains. It gives the wine also the possibility to age and to be a more wonderful wine. And I also like those wines. I think the most important and the most serious wines are the wines that can age. And Scopatino is such a wine. So it has become really a mainstay. It's especially in the Prepotro area, in the eastern part of Colli Orientali. I'm very sure that in the past, Scopatino was also present in Collio, but unfortunately, you won't find much left in Collio. That's a pity.
It has to me also this beautiful purple color.
The color can be quite dark.
Mm-hmm.
And when you speak about purple color, I would say, let's speak about Pignolo. Did you also taste Pignolo?
I have tasted a Pignolo in my life. I didn't taste one at any of the wine producers that I visited.
In Friuli, they say it's the Barolo from Friuli. Well, that's a bit exaggerated, but it's a very important wine. And Pignolo has more austere character. It's very full-bodied, but also very tannic. It's more complete. So the Scopatino is a bit into this peppery character, and but some people say the most important austere wine from Friuli is the Pignolo, and I agree. In the past, you had one producer. He started to revive this variety. He was near Butrio in the Colli Orientali area. It's the most warm part of the Colli Orientali, where the hills go down in the flat area. He started to produce 3 different varieties of Pignolo and started to communicate with the world. And I remember that I one time had lunch with him, and I never had such an impressive lunch like with this man. He was so passionate about the Pignolo grape and how important. That was very, very interesting.
The white grape that people talk a lot about and that I really love.
By the way, 2 minutes are passed. His name is Dorigo. Dorigo was that winemaker. Yes.
I love it when I meet someone who is so passionate about sharing a natural product, a piece of history, a piece of culture with the world. Are there any other red grapes that we should speak about before moving into Ribolla Gialla and other white wine grapes?
We just spoke about the Sansigot, and I think the Sansigot is not yet discovered. Many people in Friuli don't know nothing about it, but I think Sansigot is one of the most important grape varieties in the future of this area. So that's something. Yes, there are some other important red grapes, but they are planted in very tiny quantities. You have on the Karst, you have the Terran, which is variety from the Refosco family. It's even more tannic and more aggressive with acidity. And they say that it was already planted there since the Roman time. We don't know that. In the north of Friuli, you have a small area where some producers still use to produce Chaplin, Piccolo et Neri, Correnosa, Fumat, and all the grape varieties that you never heard about. And it's great because in this way, these grape varieties still go on to be produced. And I think that's also important.
Yes, I care about that a lot.
The world cannot be only Merlot and Chardonnay and Cabernet.
Yes, even as some of those international grapes do find a long and wonderful home in this region. Let's keep talking about the indigenous grapes. Shall we switch to the white grapes? Shall we speak about the wonderful white variety Ribolla Gialla?
Ribolla Gialla is variety that I've studied a lot. It's typical of this area, although there are several theories about how it originated here. I remember that one time they bombarded me with emails, with documents from the 14th century, from the Collio and the Brda area, saying that there was sales of a vineyard with Ribolla Gialla, and this proves that Ribolla Gialla already existed in Wisnivik in 1400. The point is that it's not possible, because in that period, people were never speaking about wine grapes and grape varieties. They spoke about wines, and a wine is something different, because in that period, every wine was made from a vineyard, and that vineyard was made of 5 or 10 or 20 different grape varieties. So the fact that the name was going around does not say nothing about the grape variety. But I think that the origin of the Ribolla Gialla is the same like Chardonnay. Chardonnay, we know that it was created as a crossing in one of the monasteries in Burgundy. And by the way, the father of the grape variety Chardonnay is also the father of the Ribolla Gialla. So they have the same father. So they are family. And the other grape, the other father, they don't know. They are still researching the genetics, etc. It's a very long search. But I think it's very clear that the origin of the grape variety is in this area. It is a wonderful variety, although I am not saying it's the best variety, because that's something very different. It's very typical. For example, when you talk about Collio or Brda or Colli Orientali or even Vipava, one of the most typical varieties of those areas is Ribolla. And in Slovenia, they call it Ribula, but it's the same word. It has a very high acidity. It has full body, and it can age wonderfully. It has not very strong aromas. It's not an aromatic variety, which for me is one of the reasons that I say it can also be very useful for blending. But you can have very good Ribolla Giallas that are fantastic, and some of the most important producers of the area are really pointing on Ribolla Gialla. So it's an important variety because of that.
It's very versatile. No, it's made into many different styles.
Of course, but you can also have fantastic Ribolla Gialla Spumante. I prefer Ribolla Spumante above Prosecco, much better. And that's my preference. You have very elegant light wines that you should drink on a terrace in the summer or with fresh fish. Then you have the more austere, strong varieties of the wine Ribolla Gialla, aged sometimes, aged also in wood, and the wine goes. And then you have the orange wine movement. But the orange wine movement is a chapter apart. We should speak about it. Because what happens in a certain way, some producers in this area wanted to go back to the past, read the books and heard the stories from their grandfathers about how they made wine in the past. In the past, the people in this area did not have tanks with temperature control, techniques in the cellar, filter techniques, etc. They were not existent. So what they did, they made a wine in the cellar. Very often, I have to tell you, the wine was a blend of several grape varieties. That is what sometimes the producers forget to tell you. I think they should tell this because it's the truth. And nowadays we can make a wine of one grape. In the past, it was not very useful. The producers like Kvarner and Radicon started to age the wine not in barrels, but in amphoras or in barrels. But not only aged, they fermented the wine and produced the white wine in the same way as a red wine. The white wine stayed in contact with the skins and matured in the same way as a red wine. What do you get? You get a totally different wine. And it means the wine has had more oxidation, so some of the perfumes of a white wine are gone. But in the mouth, you have more strong notations of orange, some fattiness, nuts, almonds, very strong taste, and they can be almost a red wine. The critics of this wine say the wine is dead. And I have been sometimes present at discussions between producers and Collio, and that those discussions were very heavy. And some people that were friends are not friends anymore because of these discussions about the wine style. It can happen. And they said, your wine is dead. You had all the oxidation and everything that is nice in a wine has gone. And the other said, it's the wine that your grandfather made too. And then I think the truth is in the middle. I think the area of Friuli, and especially the two big producers, Kvarner and Radicon, have done a very big thing. They could have created a movement that is now followed worldwide. Right now, you find orange wines everywhere in Australia, South Africa, in the United States, maybe in Northern Europe, you find them everywhere. Even in the Netherlands, some producers are making orange wines right now. And I'm very happy with the name orange wine because I'm Dutch. And we in the Netherlands, we have this link with orange because our king is from Orange in France. So we have our identity with orange. So I like the name orange wine for the wine.
I think about is how people do understand these places where orange wine was made all along in the country of Georgia. Now that orange wine is made everywhere, that has become popular and a whole new color and style of wine. I love for people to discover that this area of the North Adriatic, Friuli, Northern Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, was also an area where perhaps the technique was not as unbroken as in the country of Georgia, but where the orange wine style was indeed ancient and traditional and was rediscovered and brought back and really popularized around the world by these producers such as Kvarner and Radicon. It's such an interesting story. And I also find a lot of character as far as the people who initially, perhaps in the wine industry, who were skeptical of the return of this style. I think that if you're looking for what you would find in a white wine, you won't find it. Well, we could say it's apples to oranges, perhaps. Although I like to remind people that just because the name orange wine, it doesn't mean that there are any oranges inside. It is referring only to the color. So I think when you compare the orange wines to each other, and you can especially see, I think, terroir, a connection with the place, in the sense of this wine making tradition going back and to these people rediscovering the wine making techniques of their grandfathers, which is something that I just find wonderful. There was one other type of wine that I hadn't heard of before I visited Brda, and it was a type of wine, not like a Retsina, but where they actually put some herbs inside to the barrel as it was aging and explained to me that this was traditional. Can you speak to that style? I found it to be very interesting.
I do not know much about this variety, but I know that such very ancient techniques are very common in the Mediterranean wine area. So in many areas in the Mediterranean, you find kinds of wines that are produced with dried-in grapes or herbs in the wine. It's in Greece. Greece is not very far from this place. And as I told before, the town of Aquileia did have contact with Greece. So it's common. But I have to tell you, it's not very common in Brda. So no, in Brda, in fact, there are two very important wine styles. That's the conventional wine style of fresh white wines, and you have the orange wine style.
What about the wines that some grapes that are used to make the sweet wines? Should we speak a little bit about that?
There is one grape variety that is absolutely outstanding, and that is, but I find a big pity that the production has really gone down. That's Picolit. Picolit is a grape variety that's originated in this area in Friuli. Probably in the Colli Orientali, but they don't know exactly. It could be also in the vineyards of Prosecco. They have very old vineyards in this area. And the point is this wine is the plant is ill because the plant never gives complete grapes bunches. They are always a bit loose. Some bunches do not ripen. And so the plants have very low production. And the production of the remaining grapes is fantastic because they give an intensity of flavors and they give an elegance and perfumes that is really very special. The grape variety is called Picolit. And you'll find it in Brda in Collio, in Colli Orientali, and it's still there. There are still producers going on, and some producers use it also as a dry version, mostly in a blended variety. I've also found producers who made a dry white wine of it. It's still very interesting. And the blended versions, I think it's more interesting because the wine really gives something extra to another wine, so it makes the wine more fantastic. And then you have some sweet wines, and the sweet wines are made with dried in grapes from picolate, and they are among the best sweet wines in the world. They're really very, very intense. They have an elegance, they have a freshness. They don't die, they never die. You can put a bottle in your cellar for 100 years, the wine remains.
I love picolate. Yeah. What about Verduzzo?
Verduzzo is another very interesting grape variety, also identical from this area. And also here, it's a pity that the popularity is going down. The grape has a lot of character, a very thick skin, which is very important to keep it healthy. And in fact, it's very, how you say, it does not get affected easily by illnesses. So it is very protected. And it's more produced in north of the Colli Orientali area, but it was always present also in other parts of North Adriatic, in Aquileia, in the Karst, in the Grave area, and also sometimes in Veneto. It can also give very light frizzante wines with a light bubble and a light freshness and some sweetness. But the most important version is the Ramandolo. The Ramandolo is a famous wine made of dried in grapes of Verduzzo and only made from the steep hills near the town Ramandolo, and Nimes, 1 hour north of Udine, is the most northern part of the whole wine region. It's very close to the Alps. It's just the hills are the south mountains of the Alps. And also there we see the decline because the production is really going down because there's one big problem. The market for sweet wines worldwide is going down, and that's a fact, unfortunately. It's a pity.
I think it's so sad. It was something I myself didn't discover until I became a student of wines and really interested in it. As soon as I learned about historic and precious process that is used to make what is called on an American wine list dessert wines, I was completely fascinated and of course tasted them and saw that I wish the market will come to understand that a wine that is sweet, of low quality, maybe tasty, but not, something that you would get for under $10 perhaps, is so very different from one of these wines that is made from dried grapes or late harvest or so many different ancient techniques. I really hope that it becomes part of the dining experience for people again. I have faith. There's so many things that have been added and discovered and rediscovered by consumers just in recent years, orange wines among them, that this could become something that people rediscover. I'd love to do more about it on the show as well. They're so precious and delicious and fascinating, and I want them to not die out, for the tradition to continue. With the production so low, because there's so little liquid left, it's something that's precious. It's a special occasion. It's something that, maybe you don't drink every day, but hopefully you do drink it as part of your experience. All right, I'm back on my fire escape to tell you about how my interview with Lindsay Speer of Culture Without Borders in season 1, episode 8 and 9 really changed my whole language learning game. Just hearing about Culture Without Borders philosophy that the best way to learn language is through friendship helped me relax a little bit, which is really important, it turns out. As I learned from Lindsay, people don't learn very well when they're feeling stressed out or put on the spot. Since that first conversation, I've been able to attend a number of Culture Without Borders gatherings, both online and in person, and I've met a lot of really nice people while improving my Spanish. Culture Without Borders is looking for more English-speaking Spanish learners to attend their free monthly online language exchange. So go to cwbcollective.com and sign up for their newsletter for more details on how to attend. Tell me about the soil in this region. What is special about the soil?
For understanding the soil of this region, it will be good to have a look at the map. One of the maps that we put in my book, if you take it, you will see in the east, there are lines of mountains. The highest parts are dark brown, and you can discover some very straight lines from the area north of Udine, straight in a diagonal line across Collio Vipava until beyond Rijeka and down to Croatia. And in some places, when you go there, you can really see the mountains because it's straight. And it means there is a geological area that's completely tall and formed by the stones area of the Alps and the Karst, both the Alps and the Karst. And until from the Parthian Sea, there was always the sea that came and created some erosion on the area where the water met the stones. And that created a kind of area that's called ponca. And ponca is one of the most wonderful soils that you can have for winemaking. There is maybe no better soil. And the whole area of the north of Colli Orientali, then Collio and Brda, and then Vipava is made of ponca. There's also a small part near Trieste, that's ponca. In fact, right, the town of Trieste is built on ponca, and the area around is karst, so it's a different geological situation. And in the east, south of Rijeka, you have the town Novi Vinodolski in Croatia, and also there, along the coast, you can find spots with ponca. It's the same soil you can find. It's about 100 kilometers southeast. It's the same soil as Collio. So logically, there the word vino is already in the name. Vino dolski. It means hill with wine. It is a very useful hill for wine because the soil is stony, mineral. And it's easy to break. You can take a part of the stones in your hands, you can break it in two. So it means that the grapes, the rootstocks can go down in the soil and get some water. They have lower production than in other places, and the grapes get better. So it is, in short words, one of the best conditions for high quality wines.
I myself have crumbled a piece of ponca in my hands in Friuli, and it was a lovely wine geology experience. Let's speak a bit. I adore and champion indigenous grape varieties. It's what made me fall in love with the wide variety of Italy. But let's speak a little bit about the so-called international grapes, which are French grapes that became international, very popular, planted all around the world, and with good reason. They're great grape varieties. Certain varieties here have quite a long history. Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc, especially Chardonnay. My understanding is that perhaps because of the ponca soil, that they find a unique expression in this area. I often say to someone who is a fan of one of these wine varieties that they should try one from Friuli because there's a different sort of expression. Could you speak a little bit to that?
First, you spoke about Merlot. You should know that Merlot is in Bordeaux area rather recent. The first official document about Merlot in Bordeaux is about 1824. So it was registered as one of the official grapes in the registers of Bordeaux. Less than 50 years later, you find Merlot in many places in the North Adriatic. This means that after Bordeaux, the first region in the world where Merlot was grown is this area. It means Friuli, Istria, and West Slovenia, the North Adriatic. That's important. That's important. It also means that Merlot grows fantastic here, and it's true. The moderate conditions here are a little bit different. We are Collio and Gorizia are more or less on the same latitude as Bordeaux, but the conditions are different. It's a bit warmer. In Bordeaux, you have no olives, but here you have. That's an indication that it is a bit warmer. But Merlot grows fantastically. In some places also Cabernet grows fantastically. What you should know is that this whole area was Austrian. And what happened in 1850, they had the first big wine disease. It was 1850, it was the oidium. Oidium came, there was no remedy, they did not have a solution.
Can you explain what oidium is?
Oidium is a disease in the plant that arrives in hot summers, especially in dry summers. And it arrived for the first time in this area in 1850. I don't know how to describe the disease more clearly. It's like that. The point is that the grapes and the plants had no experience with the disease, and also not the Austrians. So they were terrified, because this area is the most important wine area for Austria. Austria was a big empire, and the empire needs wine. And if the most important and biggest wine region of the empire cannot make wine, that's a problem. So that problem occurred. And what did they think? Let's import some grape varieties from France, because they make the best wines. If we put them here, we can make great wines too. So that is the reason that after 1850, grape varieties like Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Blanc, and also Sauvignonas were introduced in this area. So there you had the introduction of the French grape varieties. Actually, they also tried Nebbiolo and Barbera and other grapes from Piemonte. They tried them, and they found out they didn't work. So there's no Nebbiolo left in the area, but Barbera is left. In some parts of Collio, you still can find Barbera, but they gave it another name. It's called Negrus. So when you go to San Floriano, you can ask them some. They will not know about Barbera, but they will know about Negrus, and they will indicate where is the vineyard.
You mentioned Sauvignonas. We should speak then about Friulano, correct? Also known as Sauvignon Vert. This is the same grape, I understand?
Yes, it's the same grape. Sauvignon Vert and Sauvignonas is a grape that is known from Bordeaux and the Loire area in France. In Bordeaux, still now, the people will say that it's not an interesting variety. And even if it's maybe still somewhere present in that area, also in the Loire. It is genetically it's very close to the Sauvignon Blanc, and in the vineyard it can sometimes look a little bit like Sauvignon Blanc, and there's the problem. So it was not identified correctly, or maybe the guy who brought the plants made a mistake. That's also possible. Anyway, the confusion started with the name. At a certain point in Collio and in the Friuli area, they thought, oh, this is another grape and it gives good wine. And it was really after 1920 that they started to realize that this grape is really doing well. And that's the interesting part, because in Bordeaux they say that this grape is not interesting. And here in this area, the grape grows fantastically and gives some of the most important and dominant wines of this area. And that's very curious. About the name, there was confusion. First, they thought it was coming from Tokai, because it could be also a bit sweet. And one of the counts who had some territory in the area of Collio, he came from Hungary. But we know for sure that it was among the grape varieties introduced from France in the years after 1850.
So this more recent name confusion was called Tokai or Tokai Friulano, and now renamed as Friulano. Can you speak to that confusion a little more?
Yes, because it is known that the Tokai is one of the most important wines from Central Europe. It's from Hungary, partly also in Slovakia, but the most important part is Hungary. And in the European Union, there is a kind of rule that the local names and the toponyms are dominant in wine name and the laws on wine names. And when the Hungarians claimed the unique possibility to call their wine Tokai and not the other wines, all the other producers and regions that use Tokai for any wine should refrain from using Tokai in the name. So in Alsace, there was the usage to call Pinot Gris Tokai Pinot Gris, just to enter the word Tokai, which was a selling point. It didn't have any reason at all, only a selling point. In Italy, more or less, it was the same. And in Italy, there was the conclusion, because in Italy, and also in Slovenia, by the way, all the places where the grape Sauvignon was planted, they were not allowed anymore to call it Tokai Friulano or Tokai Italico. So you should go to another name. And then, in the end, in Friuli, they call it Friulano, which is a problem, because the other areas in Italy, like Veneto or Emilia-Romagna, where the same grape is planted, they cannot call it Friulano.
Because it means the grape from Friuli, which is really from France.
No, it's legally by the region Friuli. It's legally registered only in the region Friuli. I am against this practice, because I think it's not correct to register any grape in any region in the world, because the use of grape varieties is allowed for everybody, and registering grape variety only for your territory is insane. It has no sense. Imagine what would happen when the French would claim the name Chardonnay for them. You could not produce Chardonnay in California. You cannot produce Chardonnay in Friuli, and you cannot produce it anywhere. What would happen? The world would be in big distress. The French are not doing that because they are wiser. Unfortunately, they are wiser because they understand that you have to produce a wine and to sell the wine as part of the territory. And that's the basis of any wine communication in France. And I think it has to be the same in Italy.
When there is Friuli grown in Emilia-Romagna, what do they call it?
Well, in Emilia-Romagna, I don't know exactly.
I'm sorry, Friulano.
In the Veneto, they have started to call the grape variety Thai. So it's called Thai. And that, and that was the old dialect local name in the cafes. They called it Thai. Also in Friuli, in the past, they said my glass of Thai. So it's only a resistance of an old local dialect. Still at this moment in Slovenia, they have also the problem. They do not have many vineyards, but they have the wine, and it was authentical there, historical there. And there is no union between the wine growers, so you can find this grape as many different names.
So let me get this straight. The grape is actually Sauvignon Vert, green Sauvignon from France, which didn't really do well there, but does well here for a long time in this region. For a while, it got called Tokai Friulano, just to ride on the coattails of the popularity of the Hungarian Tokai. Hungary decided, no, you can't use that anymore. So what had been commonly called Tokai Friulano became called Friulano. But since that means the grape from Friuli, there's some confusion about what to call it in the other places where it's also grown, like Slovenia and Emilia-Romagna or Veneto. What does the wine taste like? Is it worth all the trouble?
That's the point.
I think so.
The wine is absolutely worth trouble because the wine is fantastic. It's one of the mainstays of this area. And I think you cannot leave a winery, or you cannot even go to Friuli without tasting Friulano, because this is one of the most wonderful wines of the area. It has sometimes the producer goes to a more fresh style and goes with a very easy tropical apple style. But very often it's a bit more strong. It has more strong perfumes. It has this apricot, white peach, almond style of flavor. And it can be very full-bodied. It can have a lot of alcohol, can go above 14 degrees sometimes. It has low acidity, but it can be very tasty. It's really in the hands of some good producers, it's one of the most important wines of Friuli. So absolutely it's an important wine. Interesting thing is that the same confusion happened also in Chile. In Chile, they had also the confusion because they had vineyards of Sauvignons. In the past, they thought it was Sauvignon Blanc. Now they found out it's different. And now in Chile, they didn't fuss about names. They just call it Sauvignons. And I think that's the most right thing to do.
Just calling it Sauvignonas. I noticed that's what you're referring to it as. Yes. Wow. What a fascinating history. I think it's a great example of how it's not so simple what these grapes are called and which grapes they are throughout history. I find this to be a fascinating detective work. Thank you for explaining it so well. Are there any other important wines that we've left out from the North Adriatic? I think we did pretty well.
I think we did pretty well. You have a lot of grape varieties in Friuli. In my book, you have seen chapter 7. I wrote about many varieties, white and red. One of the wine varieties that I would like to stress still is the Pinot Blanc, because
yes.
I think the eastern part of Friuli gives one of the most interesting Pinot Blancs of the world.
Yes.
Pinot Blanc from Collio is one of world class, especially in the hands of some top producers. Another thing is the Glera. I found out that Glera can be interesting. And this is very strange because nobody, even the best winemaker in Italy or worldwide, they know about wine, etc. Nobody knows that you can make even an interesting wine of the grape variety that is used for Prosecco. But you can. I found it. I went to Trieste, and in near Trieste, you have these very old historical vineyards. They are very historical. And there are some old families still continuing to produce wine. And they are very modest. No idea that their wine is like it in Paris, it would be one of the most important wines from France. In London, it would be one of the most important English wines. And here near Trieste, they're doing something very modest, and they don't know what they have in their hands. So one of these guys, his name is, I forgot the name. It will come up in some minutes. André Bohler is his name. He makes a full 100% Glera from this area. And this is also the original area where the Glera variety is coming from.
That's what you said. The name Prosek comes from this place. This is the origin of Prosecco.
Prosecco and Glera is from that part. And this Glera wine was very interesting. It was a wonderful wine. I didn't know it. It was a big surprise for me. I had no idea that Glera can be so good.
It's made into a dry wine. A still wine.
It's just a still dry wine, just like Ribolla Gialla. It was not far from Ribolla Gialla.
That's so interesting. I would love to try that. Paul, this project, this Modo di Bre project, is about wine and local drinks, yes, but also about language and about my perhaps romantic conception that the local language could be considered the part of the terroir, or at least that local words, local sayings, local dialects tell the same story about culture as we can find in a glass of wine. I actually want to read a quote from your book, from early in your book. Can a territory talk? Can vineyards talk? Or hills, rootstocks, vines, vineyards, cellars, houses? I wanted to ask you a little bit about the linguistic diversity of this region, but also of this idea of a wine glass speaking, or how these messages about culture, I feel, are as important to your life as they are to mine. So I wanted to ask you about your question about things speaking to us, hearing these messages from wine and from language.
There is a lot to say about this. So now we have to give me at least 2 hours.
Anytime.
The first thing that I want to say is that wine grows in a territory, wine grows in a place, and wine is always part of a context. So wine is always part of some history or some culture, and has to do something with the territory around. So you cannot only talk about wine and grapes, how it's made and how many years in the wood, and then taste it and enjoy it. No, wine is also part of the culture and the language and the history of one territory. And that is especially also the case with the wines of this area. And that's one of the things. I think when you drink a wine from this area, you drink history. And that's fantastic. So the history of this area, which is also in part described in the book of Hemingway, in his book Farewell to Arms, the history of this area is very typical. And in every wine, it comes back. In the Ribolla Gialla, that's called Ribula in Slovenia. In the Schioppettino, that's called Pokalcha in Slovenia. In the Pinot Blanc, that's called Pinot Bailey in Slovenia, etc. And it means this is a multicultural society, because that was also the typical thing in the Austrian Empire. Everybody could speak his own language. There was no thing like dominance of one language. No, if you have your own language in your village, you just continue. Only the mayor of the village, he has to speak German, and the government has to speak German, and the rest of the area doesn't speak German. So it was not even necessary to speak German, even if they were in a German empire. And it meant that the local languages continued. And Friulano, very strange, is an older language than Italian. Italian is a rather recent language based on the Tuscan variant of Italian, and created also because Italy became a nation in 1861. But the Friulano is based on the old Vulgar Latin of the 3rd or 4th century after Christ. So it's much older. And Friulano is also officially recognized as a local language. But go to page number 15 in my book, and look how many languages are spoken in this area. So it's Italian, it's Friulan in Friuli, which is a Neo-Latin language. It's Slovenian, it's Antique Slovenian. And also that's, for example, it's fantastic to see that Slovenian is one of the many Slavic languages. In Slavic language, you speak right from the border east of Northeast Italy until Vladivostok, in a big part of the whole continent. It's all Slavic languages. But there are many different ones. And Slovenian is related to Russian and Serbian, etc. But Old Slovenian, they say, is more close to Russian. And Old Slovenian is not spoken anymore in Slovenia itself, but in Italy, yes. Near Cividale, you'll find an area in the mountains where they still speak Old Slovenian. And nobody knows it. This is fascinating. So German was the most important language in the past and has left. And then go to Istria. In Istria, there are two main languages. It's Croatian and Italian. And there are also sad histories to tell about the people that had to leave and were kicked out of the country in the past. But still, many native Italian speakers live in Italy, and many people who have as first language Italian, or at least an Italian dialect, live in Istria. And they found out that many villages in like Buie, Viginada, Porec, Vertenello, etc., Omak, Umago, they have all their local variety of an old dialect of the 16th, 18th century area of Vicenza near Venice. And they were all slightly different. And now they have a project in Istria going to protect these languages. And besides, you have also the Istrian dialect. And you have also a small area where they speak Romanian. Old Romanian that's not spoken in Romania anymore. Only by some very old families in Istria. Very curious.
I read in your book that the Istro-Romanian people are considered by, I'm quoting, considered by UNESCO to be the smallest ethnic group in Europe.
Yes, if you consider the language as the base for ethnic group, then it's the smallest, probably, yes. Because the language is dying out.
I'm so interested in these Neo-Latin dialects that you're mentioning. That's so interesting.
There are different Neo-Latin dialects or languages. Rhaeto-Roman, which is spoken in small parts of Switzerland, is quite close to Friulan. It's also a Neo-Latin language. And they say that in the north of Italy, there are more places where they speak local dialects that are in fact based on Old Latin with some influences from France, etc. It could be that they're also kind of Neo-Latin dialect.
We're of course talking about several different countries here in a region that has long had multi-ethnic, multicultural identity. But I'm curious about, from place to place, generally speaking, the use of what Italian speakers often call dialect. You might, speak Italian with other Italians from other regions or during business, but then at home or with your friends, you're speaking a local language. So how strong in these various areas are the use of a local language in your experience as a traveler and a scholar of these matters?
I think in wine areas, local people have a very strong local identity that you see in Piemonte, where I live. And you can see it also in Friuli, but also in Brda. The Brda is a local dialect of Slovenian, and it's different from Slovenian. I don't understand Slovenian, so I cannot make the difference between Brda Slovenian and the real Slovenian, but they tell me that there is a difference. And then you go to Collio, and there you have the problem, not the problem, but the fact that a part of the inhabitants of Collio speak Slovenian at home. So there is a Slovenian minority in Italy. It's still very strong. It's one of the reasons that the official language on the label of Prosecco can eventually also be Slovenian. So it's technically possible that you have a Prosecco, they'll say wine, and on the back label you have it in Slovenian language. The point about Slovenian language Prosecco label is the point that the Prosecco wine, they'll say Prosecco. I'm not speaking about DCG Prosecco because that's a very limited area, especially the Val d'Obbiana, it's very limited. So we are speaking about the general Prosecco DUC wine that can be produced in Veneto and Friuli. And they included all vineyards in Veneto and all vineyards in Friuli. So you can make it in a very large area. The point is that in one part of this area, a very small, tiny part, that's the eastern hills of Friuli, near the border with Slovenia, there you have people who are speaking Slovenian minority. In theory, they can produce also the Prosecco. They will not do it probably because the vineyards of Collio you will not use for making Prosecco. They use it to do in the plant. But in theory, they can do it. And that's the reason that legally they have to allow the possibility in the law that a back label of a wine of Prosecco can be put in Slovenian because it is possible there will be a Slovenian speaking producer. In theory. In practice, it will not happen very often, but it can happen in theory.
Can we talk a little bit about other cultural products from this region? Perhaps this prosciutto di San Daniele, different agricultural products or artistic crafts like furniture?
To speak about furniture in Italy, you have to speak about Friuli because one of the most important areas for producing chairs in Europe in the past was Friuli. When you go to Monzano, there are very big factories. There is very little left of it, but it was the chair producing region of Europe. And it has to do with the fact that wood is easy to obtain from the Alps. It's close. You have a lot of good people working with their hands and handcraft, making high quality handcraft products. And now all these products like chairs and furniture are more mechanized. And that means that much of the production has left Friuli. That's a pity. But still, a part of it has remained in Friuli. And there are still some great producers of handcraft work with wood, like wine boxes, for example, but also chairs. You still find them in Friuli. When you speak about ham and prosciutto is the Italian word for ham. You have to tell the world that this is the area for producing ham. There's no other region in the world where ham is so important. In Istria, in the Karst, in the hills around Trieste, in the hills around Cormons and Collio, you have so many artisanal production of ham, prosciutto. And the prosciutto di San Daniele is one great example. And here I always say that Italians, they are artists because they have so great sensibility for finding to the right conditions and exploring and maximizing the right conditions to make a fantastic product. And that they have done in San Daniele. It's very interesting to see that the air stream from the Alps passes along the hills. San Daniele is situated a little bit higher, not on a hill, not far from the Alps, so they are profiting from the airstream and the exchange of cold and warm air. In the area around, of course, there was always the maiale, the production of dried meat for ham, and they used to mature the ham on the ceilings, on the open air parts of the buildings, so that the ham could mature in a natural way. And there's no place where they do it better, although today San Daniele is produced in big factories where the conditions of the air cycling are produced by machines, not by the open air. So that has changed. But the same ham production you find also near Cormons. There is a very famous producer of ham near Cormons. He's called Osvaldo, and every producer in the area of Cormons will always tell you, you have to go to Osvaldo. You cannot leave this area before you go to Osvaldo. That's the culture of the area. When you go to the Karst or to Trieste or to Istria, they produce you with the ham from the Karst or the ham from Istria. It's local, it's typical.
Tell me about the cheese.
There are so many.
What's your favorite?
One of my favorites is what they call llama. Llama is the Slovenian word or the Slavic word for cave. And in the caves in the Karst area above Trieste, they have the llama cheese, which is matured in these conditions. It's very humid condition in these caves. And this gives this cheese a very special taste and very special cheese. And then you have the tolmin. Tolmin, you have always every winery in Brda and Lipava always will offer you a part of tolmin cheese, and also in Collio. You have the Montasio, which is from the northern Alps in Friuli. Montasio is also a delicious cheese.
When a person is visiting the North Adriatic, besides touring wineries, what other activities can people do as they're traveling? What are some places that you have to see that you can't miss?
You cannot miss Trieste. Trieste is absolutely very interesting town with this accent of the huge cultural history that you still find in the town. It's still very multicultural. It's kind of Vienna, but put at the sea. And the big place of Trieste is totally open to the sea, and this is wonderful. You cannot miss Gorizia. Gorizia is a very typical Austrian town, but it's now in Italy. And Gorizia has still this old center, which I like very much. Please notice that Gorizia and Nova Gorica together will be European capital for culture in 2025. So in 2 years, the towns Gorizia and Nova Gorica will be together the capital for culture. So they will be center for culture in Europe. So they will be world famous. So we are going to read and see more of this. When you go to the north, go to Cividale. Cividale is absolutely one of the most interesting towns in Italy. Cividale has old cellars of 300 before Christ, just near the center, just near the old Roman bridge. They have the statue of Caesar, Julius Caesar, who was founding the town. And they have the one of the oldest churches in Europe that's still visible, and the Tempietto Longobardo of the 8th century is part of it, even 2 centuries before. Very, very old country. When you want to see something special, you have also to go to Aquileia, which is culturally extremely important, and also Grado. Grado is an island on the coast before Aquileia. It's 20 kilometers from Aquileia. It is the southern part of the laguna. Also here, Friuli has some lagunas, just like Venice. The only thing is that Grado is older than Venice. The whole world talks about Venice, but Grado is older. And Grado has some very old findings, some very old statues, and the old church is, I think, 6th century, where you'll find a church that is still visible and totally correct. It's 6th century. The only place that I know is Porec, that's in Istria. They have also such a place. And these towns along the coast, south of Trieste, you have a long list of towns. They are wonderful. It starts with Koper, then you have Isola, Piran, then you have Umag in Croatia, Porec, Rovinj, and then Pula and deep south of Istria. All these towns have so rich history, beautiful old Venetian centers, wonderful to visit. By the way, something interesting for tourists would be to do the Alps Adria tour. There is, it's called the Alps Adria Trail. It starts somewhere in Austria or maybe in Germany. I don't know exactly. It stops somewhere in Istria in the south, and it goes along all these historical places, through the vineyards, through the mountains. You can do it by foot. You can do it by car. You can do it by bicycle. And there are people from all over the world coming there and doing the Alps Adria Trail and visiting this part of the North Adriatic. And of course, they all go there and drink the great wines.
Oh, it sounds like a dream.
It is a dream.
What about in terms of enjoying the outdoors?
Then you have to go to Slovenia. Slovenian people are very sportive. So you can do a lot of climbing in the mountains. You can do rafting on the Isonzo River. You can also kayaking in the sea. You can go to Trieste. Very interesting. Near Trieste, you have a canyon that's going east from Trieste into this very strong hill sector of the Karst mountains. And this is a canyon that is totally uninhabited by people. It's totally nature. It's a natural area. And there you have the lowest alpine refuge in the world. It's about 70 meters above sea level, because you can do several days of hiking in the nature over there. And yes, when you are hiking several days, you need a place to stay the night. That's the reason they put a refuge.
What about fishing? That's one of my favorite things to do. I remember being told there was great fly fishing in Brda.
In Brda, you can do fishing because there are no rivers. You can do fishing in the Isonzo. I do not know exactly how many fish you can find, but there will be some trout, very probably. Yes, there are some rivers, but some of the rivers are rain rivers, so they're a big part of the year. They are drying, so there's nothing.
I read something in your book about a good place for fishing.
I would absolutely go to the lagoons near Grado, and there you should go fishing, and there you will find fish, because it is where the big Isonzo and the other rivers come down in the sea. You have still a low amount of water, 2 meters deep, for a large area. You have it's a mixed sweet and salt water, so it's a special condition. You have a fantastic fishing there.
Paul, how many languages do you speak?
I try to speak a little bit of English. You can notice that my English is not without mistakes. My Italian is also not without mistakes. The same with Spanish, the same with Dutch, the same with German and French. And those languages I do speak. I can communicate in those languages, and I try to learn also a bit Slavic.
I would still say that I speak an English that is not without mistakes, and that's my native language. So I think that's a lot of languages to speak with or without mistakes. I really like to talk about idioms and local sayings in this project. I think they also tell a story about culture. I wonder if you have a saying that comes to mind from the North Adriatic, or from Dutch, or from any of the languages that you like to speak.
Well, there is one that I know, but it's not from the North Adriatic, it's from Piemonte. It is, quando arriva la minestra, non c'è più sinistra e destra. And it means when the soup is arriving, minestra means soup, there's no political left and right, because everybody's eating.
Oh, I love this. That's a wonderful saying.
It's easy. Quando arriva la minestra, non c'è più sinistra e destra.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Paul, thank you so much. This was a fantastic interview. I learned so much. And I really hope that everybody goes and gets this book, your book, North Adriatic by Paul Balke. Where can people order and buy this book from you?
Actually, I've been speaking with several publishing houses in the US. We did not yet find an agreement. So I'm still looking for a solution there. I'm going on Amazon, but going myself on Amazon is not the best option.
Sure.
So I'm looking for an option. Any case, everybody can send me an email. You find me on my website, paulbalke.com, and you can get the book sent to you. I sent an invoice and the book will arrive at your home. This is a very interesting part of Italy. And as we talk about Italy, you easily go around the borders and you've been in the North Adriatic. And there is interest in the US. I know that.
So if you want the book, you can order it from Paul directly at paulbalke.com. You can send him an email. I really recommend that you get it. It's quite a beautiful book. It reminds me of an older generation of travel and wine books, what in the past you might call a coffee table book, just full of such beautiful pictures. But what I think is missing from that description is the deep scholarship and analysis and insight. So, I think it's so much more interesting than a more blandly designed sort of travel guide. It's really a tribute and a deep research study, and also a delightful read about the North Adriatic, including Friuli-Venezia Giulia, West Slovenia, Istria, and Kvarner. Paul, I thank you so much for your work. I'm really glad that you are out there doing this.
Thank you very much. That's great talking with you. And you have a great dedication.
Thank you. I think we are interested in some of the same things. I believe we realized this immediately when we met in the micro mega tent at the Vinitaly Wine Fair in Italy. I can't wait to see you again in person, Paul. I know you travel all over the world. I hope to see you in New York. I hope to see you give some kind of presentation. But in the meantime, thank you so much for coming on this podcast.
I've never been in New York, so I really would love to come there.
Oh my goodness. What a shame. You've traveled so widely. I hope to welcome you soon.
It's true. It's really a shame. I really would like to come. Yes.
Listen, I just think we're also lucky to have heard this interview with Paul. And I want to say thank you to all of our listeners, to all of our supporters, wherever you go and whatever you like to drink. Always remember to enjoy your life and to never stop learning. Support us on Patreon. Grab the newsletter at motodiberry.com and subscribe to the YouTube channel at motodiberry to watch the travel show, Motodiberry TV. Music for the show was composed by Ercilia Prosperi for the band Oh. Purchase their music at the link in the notes.